Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the part of world you are connecting it from. Thank you so much for joining in. I am Puneet. I head the partnership and alliances here at Vinculum. We as Vinculum, we are a SaaS-based platform. We enable brands and sellers to sell anywhere faster through our integrated platform, which comes pre-integrated with different marketplaces, different front-end platforms, and the point of sale system. Few other ecosystem partners are part of the overall journey. I welcome you everyone for joining in. I've been joined by my co-panelist, Lemil. He's Chief Business Officer at Cosmico International. Cosmico, they are really solving the toughest puzzle in the supply chain, which is the warehousing automation piece, right? And he's really easing out the life for many supply chain people who are struggling day in, day out for different operation part of it. I request Lemil to talk a bit on Cosmico front, and then we will start with the rest of the journey.
Yep.
Over to you, Lemil.
Thank you, Puneet. Yes. So we're here at Cosmico. We specialize in, like Puneet rightly mentioned, in terms of helping supply chains and specifically on warehousing to operate more efficiently. So we provide a software that helps with optimization of workflows, complementing the warehouse management systems in order to enable increased productivity, orchestration, as well as visibility across the board. And we will work with Vinculum closely in order to enable such efficiencies for their warehouse customers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lemil, for giving a brief about Cosmico. So just to give you the context, so of course, each one of us seen those last 2 years. It was really tough for all the parts, right? The pandemic was really affected many lives. During those times, of course, the digital transformation or the automation part of it, which was the priority 3 or priority 4 for majority of the organizations, right? And certainly became a priority number 1, because either you are in the game or you will be wiped out without automation. So those are the trends which really sets it apart from 0 to say 100 from the automation standpoint. Lemil, what are the key trends, the emerging trend you are seeing in Southeast Asia, and what is the effect you have seen on the overall supply chain within the SE or the ASEAN region?
Yeah. So I think just a few major trends actually during this transition during the pandemic. With so many people being stuck at home, people not visiting stores, I think that you really see it within the warehousing side, even on the supply chain side, a lot of the orders are now being fulfilled online. So there's a huge transition to D2C. So now but with the transition to D2C, I mean, the expectation is also has increased, right? Direct to consumer. But the customers are now expecting the delivery not just in days, but in like almost in hours and minutes, right? So your fulfillment time, your service delivery times, your service level agreements have increased significantly for a lot of the businesses. Yeah. Beyond that, because of this increased need for SLA, we're also seeing a greater adoption of process systemization. So now businesses, they cannot rely on in the warehouse sometimes because of the pandemic. So now they want to rely more on process systemization to execute like repetitive tasks in order to overcome this labor shortage when it does occur, right? And also because the labor in Southeast Asia, it's I think everybody knows this, inflation, cost of labor has gone up. So process systemization of repetitive tasks is all the more important. Yeah. And next is also because of the increased adoption of autonomous systems. When people do not turn up for work, it creates a labor crunch, and many of the operators are now convinced that perhaps it's better to adopt tools that can support their everyday tasks that perhaps won't fall sick during the pandemic. And I know that's a tough thing to say, to replace some labor, but certain labor can be replaced and certain labor won't be replaced. But at the same time, for repetitive tasks, more and more so people are looking towards autonomous systems. Additionally, you also think about warehouse intelligence, right? People are looking not only of analysis, now they want intelligence. with all these disruptions on the ground and constantly changing situation, they need something that's more dynamic, something that will adapt, that will improve on the fly. And this will allow them to maintain complete oversight over their operations, as well as to ensure that the operations run smoothly. And last but not least, I believe that a lot of the businesses, because now they are also working from home or they are moving towards the cloud, they are ready to adopt more API forward or cloud ready solutions, as they want to be agile and be able to adopt solutions as and when the situation changes. And I think, Puneet, you can also attest to this in your line of work.
Absolutely, Lamuel, you're bang on, because pandemic, as you rightly said, so there were only few channels which were open. When I say few, it is the digital channel which was open, and during these COVID time, there were hardly any walk into the retail store, right? And the customer was spoiled for his choices, for different choices, right? So organizations earlier, when they were expecting the customer to walk into their stores or customer to walk into their brand outlets, it was the other way around. Now the organization used to walk into where the customers they are, right? And pandemic, as you rightly said, it has set the expectation and it is not going to roll back. The quick commerce and the D2C part of it, that has ever evolved. Now, as you rightly said, the expectation is to get the product in an hour, not in days or in weeks, right? Those days are gone. And to meet up this space, you need to have the environment to meet demand. Yeah, my brand digital trends. This is the trend which we are seeing across the globe. So not just in SEA region or the India part of it, we are seeing this across the globe. If you could tell me that we do talk a lot about automation, the technology and other part of it, but generally, if you could make us understand how a brand can leverage the technology in a supply chain and a piece of it, and they can take it to the next level. How do they leverage this technology part of it?
Yeah, and thanks for that question. I think that's very important. But instead of just telling you, I also want to show you how businesses are adapting or adopting solutions.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So you can. I want to draw your attention to the 3 different phases that Cosmico has come up with in terms of identifying which stage of the process you're at, right?
Yeah.
So depending on each brand's operational and technological readiness, we believe that they should adopt different solutions for their warehouse transformation journey.
Okay.
Yeah. So for businesses that are currently at with operations with limited technology or ability to commit immediate resources, the best way that you can help your business today is actually just to adopt process and system optimization first, right? So a lot of this can be through software in order to attain the most optimal state for your current, perhaps manual operations. Yeah. So what this means for you is that all you need to do is adopt software in order to help to improve or make your current operations as efficient as possible without incurring additional resources on hardware investment, which sometimes can be quite challenging for businesses that are still learning how to adopt technology, right? So
wonderful. This is very important, Lemuel. Sorry to cut you, but this is very, very important for the attendees also. So the anywhere who is purely on a manual system, they don't have the process automation set up at their end. This is where they will fall. They can start process improvement to start with by using few of the softwares, right? Instead of going directly on the automation.
Yes, exactly. Because automation, like you said, it's a journey, right?
It's a journey.
That's why we've already outlined it to show you that there are 3 distinct steps that you can adopt in order to reach that journey, the end of the journey. And it doesn't need to start from level 3, right? You don't need to start at phase 3. You can work your way up. Yeah. So like I was mentioning just now in terms of operations, also for a lot of businesses that are still on manual, maybe their adoption of solutions or technology is not so great. So a lot of the users are also not used to it. The nice thing is that with process and system optimization, you don't have to relearn your operations, because there are things like current UI, and I'm sure Tinkerlum has a fantastic WMS UI already.
Yep.
That users can continue to use while still benefiting from the operational improvements from process and system optimization. Yeah. And then moving forward, let's say your business or your operations has already had some form of adoption of technology and also
Right.
ability to further commit immediate resources, then perhaps you can adopt a hybrid model, which is your phase 2, where there's cross-platform process optimization. So
Sure.
between some smart hardware as well as some manual operations, and then as well as some orchestration. Now you have getting to the point where you have some cross-platform orchestration, as well as visibility, connectivity, as well as the adopting some automation tools like your smart trolleys and what have you. These are things that you can adopt. And this is very wonderful for a lot of these businesses that are already at that stage, because then while they benefit from the operational efficiencies from process optimization, they can also complement their operations with this intelligent warehouse hardware. Yeah, and this will help them to increase accuracy and visibility. Yes, and even though the investment here might be slightly higher for some businesses, I think it's also good because this sets the backbone, the technological backbone, having all these sensors and having all these connectivity tools for a full automation in the future, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So for businesses that really, you feel that you already have adopted a lot of these kind of tools already, and you have the capacity to further engage in automation, then we would say that, maybe you are ready to move on ahead to full automation, where you adopt autonomous hardware such as autonomous robots, autonomous forklifts, and and even to adopt system optimization or process optimization of autonomous centric kind of processes. Yeah. Of course, this is the highest level that people can achieve, but in the case also you will have the highest returns as well, which I can share a little bit on later.
Sure, we will definitely deep dive into data, because you rightly pinpointed that whichever the stage the businesses are in, right? Start with the process automation or the process improvement, wherein they'll see little bit of success, and then they get into the technology adoption, and then the full automation part of it, right? So there are different stages of the way you have staged or phased out your business model. Similar fashion, the automation can be phased out, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and depending on different stages, as you rightly said, they can adopt to different autonomous automation tools. Wonderful. Just to get little bit deep on this lemon, we talked about, of course, different scale of business, different stages of business, but help me understand who is the ideal customer who has to opt in for this. Of course, each one of us, every businesses, they are rely on warehousing part of it, but who are the key customers? What do you think is the right audience to adopt in for this automation tools?
Yes. So I think that's a good good thing to ask, right? I mean, when you do understand what is your technological readiness, number one, right? How ready are you to do the business? And sometimes this requires somebody to help you do a review also. Maybe you're at phase 1, maybe you're phase 2, maybe you're phase 3, right? I think it's good to have a third party view to understand where you are, as well as your own internal review. But besides that, some of the baseline that you should ideally have is that you should be moving at high volumes. I think you higher the volumes, the more you need to have that kind of process and system optimization. Maybe items that are very loose, very discrete, or very high mix. This is also another key driver of complexity. Yeah. Sure. And as well as very high value items where your SLAs are very high. Each item you move less is gonna cause affect your bottom line or your top line.
Interesting. Okay.
And as well as high manpower. Your high manpower is also another aspect that it will be very important, right? With high manpower cost, maybe in your region, or as well as high manpower volume. Because even though your manpower might be cheap, but if your volume is high, it's also a problem, because when a significant portion of the workforce is down, then you get physically limited in your ability to deliver. Yeah. And
yeah, I was about to ask Lemuel, because
Yeah.
India, considering India as a market wherein labor is still easily available. However, if we talk about the SCA part of it, it's quite expensive. The labor is very, very expensive, and
Yeah.
people do look in for solutions which can help curb their labor cost or the resource cost. And this is a
Yeah.
wonderful tool, right?
Yeah.
And
I would say this, even if the labor is cheap, if 50% or 20% of your labor cannot turn up for work that day, you will still not be able to replace that labor on the fly. So it's always important to have to have something to fall back on.
certainly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you could talk about, of course, you talked about the category part of it, which is the industry wherein the high volumes are there, or a product mix, or there is a lot of manpower which is required. The next question is gonna be, am I a customer? Will I fit in this? You said that your team or the Cosmico can review what stages you are in, right? Is there any base condition, the eligibility condition, if I need to look at that, this is the kind of warehouse you need to have, this is the kind of, so you know where I'm coming from, that what is the basic setup, what you look for when you go meet your customer?
So I think some of the main drivers or criteria that we will look at is how big is your warehouse and what is the volume of your picks. So specifically, I would say that if you're running a warehouse that's anywhere between 30,000 square feet and above, as well as maybe you have about 100,000 picks, I think that you're already having enough size and volume where you can see significant operational benefits just by process and system optimization, or even adopting autonomous kind of software or hardware. Yeah. And by categories and distribution, the largest categories and distribution, I would say that the ones with the greatest need for this kind of optimization would be in factory logistics, maybe in manufacturing, groceries, right? Your grocers, they need that as well. Fast-moving consumer goods for retailers, or even like fast fashion apparel for retailers, and health and beauty. I think if you fall into any one of these categories, you will definitely be seeing an uptrend in the volumes of mix, and as well as the different kinds of fulfillment requirements. So there's definitely, you're in a position to benefit from automation.
Quite interesting, because these are the clear categories. Even Vinculum is going back as a company, and we see a clear match over there. And these are the, as you rightly said, these are the industries, or these are highly labor intensive jobs, right? And it involves a lot of, and this is prone to error also, right? The moment there are a lot of resource involvement there, this is gonna be prone to error, right? And it's more to do with the kind of the FMCG companies, right? Wherein the volume is very high, automation is must for them, right? This is good. At least you talked about that minimum of 30,000 to 50,000 square feet, lakh picks, which is the ideal customer, anybody who's opting for the automation part of it. Apart from that, if you could talk on the robotic front, because there are, I'm sure there will be charging units and other things that need to be installed. That also be covered within that 30,000, 50,000 square feet, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. That's why you need a bit more space to accommodate for robotics. You need the charging space, you need the home location, you need to have wide enough aisles for the robots to move. I think these are all relevant considerations when you're looking at adopting robotics. Yeah, it's not as simple as saying, let me find a 3,000 square feet facility and just put one robot inside. Usually you need a fleet of robots and you need all this relevant infrastructure. But that's not to say that, in a smaller environment that it's not possible. It's just that it'll be a bit more challenging. But from what our experience, having a slightly larger facility does accommodate for automation much better.
Wonderful. This is really informative, because there are attendees who have small warehouses, there are attendees who will have large warehouses, and depending on the requirements, right? So they can clearly differentiate themselves that where all it is possible to adopt the robotic part of it, and where the hybrid model can be a perfect fit for them.
Yeah.
Very nice. There are few other jargons which are quite popular in the supply chain part of it, right? You talked about robotic part. Of course, this is the ultimate automation what anybody can think of. But there are a lot of talks on the smart wearables. Can you throw some light on that?
Yeah. So usually when we use the word automation, sometimes people get confused. They thought that, oh, automation means robots only, right? Process that you can automate also. That is also part of automation tools that people neglect. So things like smart wearables, I think, are very important in enhancing overall productivity because they give two important things: higher job accuracy, as well as allowing for higher SLAs. So for job accuracy, where the volumes are really great, and then there's also a high margin of error because you're picking so much, right? Sometimes people are natural; you get tired after picking, right? So or you're doing an activity. Mistakes can happen, and these kind of mistakes can have like long-lasting repercussions down the road. Because if you pick wrongly, the cost of reverse logistics, in fact, it might be higher than that of the forward logistics. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So to have that high job accuracy, you're using a smart wearables where they can just pinpoint exactly what you need to do and prompt you with your next order. This is really important in terms of allowing for higher job accuracy. Next, also because of the direct feeding of information, it also can help you with getting greater granularity as well as recommendations to move users in real time and allowing them to execute the jobs more effectively and efficiently. So think about it. Every second that you are not thinking about what to do and being told what to do, you are actually working. And your working means you are increasing
your productivity.
Yeah.
Bang on, because that's what people on the automation front, as I rightly said, people only talk about that robotics means the automation. Other than that, the smart wearable, there are enough of other gadgets which are available. But how are they improving the efficiency? Might be there is a information wise, there's still a stagnation around that. Wonderful. Thank you so much on that front. So quickly, we talked about different business models. We talked about who is the ideal customer profile. We talked about who should opt in for these, right? And more important, what is the basic criteria when they look at automation, especially on the robotic front? Because it costs a bomb. It's not cheap. Now, the next question is going to be more to do with, just wanted to, of course, we will talk about the pricing part of it. But before that, can you talk about a little bit on the benefits, what one can derive using all these modules which you talked about, right? And then we'll get into the pricing bit also.
Yeah, Puneet, I expect you to ask the hard questions. And I think this is a big one for a lot of businesses. They always have to ask, how much do I have to spend? And then how much am I going to get a return? And it's fair, all businesses have to care about the ROI in terms of return, right? So I would say that in terms of manual or system process optimization, there are softwares out there, such as ourselves in Cosmico, that we have seen and helped businesses gain anywhere between 20 to 40% efficiency gains on the average. Yeah. So this is actually quite high, given that it's very cost efficient to deploy these kind of systems with the only investment in software and very little investment even in hardware, right? Because this is direct implementation, let's say integration with the WMS, which most businesses already have. So we say this is a quick win, right? Quick win, low hanging fruit, which you can get almost immediate ROI. Yeah.
These are really mind-boggling numbers, and anybody and everybody will jump for it, right? I don't see, because you talked about the ROI front, and this is the low-hanging one, as you rightly said. I'm sure the pricing wise also it's gonna be a little cheaper as compared to the one which we will be talking about later on.
Yeah. And these are big numbers that sometimes they're like, oh, but we're only now saving 2 to 3%. How is it possible they can do so much? That's the thing. You have to open your mind to the possibility that that even certain things can really improve the productivity. And it's also not expensive, like you rightly mentioned. It's we have a subscription. It's based on a subscription fee that we work with Vinculum also closely. It's all per line item. And per line item, if you think Vinculum is offering you a good fair deal, we also equally we provide that complementary product with them. So yeah, it's not too expensive to even adopt based on subscription. Yeah, for
Sure,
manual
sure,
optimization. Yeah.
sure.
For
How about
yeah.
the hybrid and the
Oh,
robotic
yeah.
one? If you talk about the numbers, the ROI front, if you could
Yeah.
cover that as well.
Yeah. So for hybrid operations, actually, we're starting to see already people who are adopting customer use cases as well, that where people are adopting both having some smart having some smart trolleys and all that sort of stuff. They really start
Yeah.
to see efficiency gains of upwards of 30 to 50% already on the productivity, right?
Yeah.
Because this investment is software, right? If they have the hardware that can help to make decisions in real time as well, it helps them to improve way more than with just pure manual
Absolutely.
optimization.
Now
Yeah.
you are hitting the nail, right? Software versus hardware. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Complementary.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Wonderful. This is quite interesting. And if you could talk about it, I'm sure this is gonna be a little tricky one. On the robotic front, typically, what is the investment? So one robot or anybody who has to do the deployment as a robotic, if you could give us some ballpark figure.
Yeah. So for robots, I think that yes, eventually when you want to invest in robots, it's a worthy investment in the long run, right? Because then you set yourself up for the future.
Yep.
Maybe the initial investment might be higher, right? For most businesses that are looking to invest in robots, easily I would say that you would easily spend 20 to at least 30,000 on a robot. That's in
Okay.
US dollars.
Okay.
Just to invest in one robot. And one fleet, you cannot just have one robot. One robot doesn't work by itself. If not, there's nobody to work with, right? Unless it just works with a human, right?
All right.
So usually you need a fleet of at least maybe I would say 5 to 10 robots easily, just for a small fleet. And then we're talking about small fleets. We've seen deployments of robots where it's upwards of 75 to 100 robots, and that's a huge fleet. But the thing is that sometimes the requirements do require that. So you have to think about it as a business if that is investment that you want to make. But if you want to make that investment, you can easily see your productivity increase in upwards of 50%, no problem, right? It's just that where are you in your cycle? Are you ready to adopt this kind of solution?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. These are really great numbers to think about anybody who's looking for the automation part of it. And the kind of number you talked about, improvement in terms of the efficiency and the productivity, these are really asking the attendees to think about how soon they can start their automation journey. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this number. Now, the other aspect, of course, we talk about the automation part of it. We talk about the journey. Trickier one, and this is the talk of town nowadays, is the data, right? The data is the key part playing in all the business modules, whatever you talk about, be it marketing, all the functions, marketing, sales, your supply chain, everywhere, it's connected through the data, and the data flows seamlessly throughout, right? So if you could help me get deep dive into how do organization right now capitalize on the big data sets. These could be mined from machines or the sensors in the supply chain itself. How is it helping them to go proactive instead of reactive, which is currently the scenario happening in the warehousing part of it? Can you brief a bit on the big data part, how organization is capitalizing on the big data?
Yeah. So actually, I also would like to share with you a bit of how we think about big data in our organization, or just data in general, right?
Yep.
In data in general, we believe is supposed to help you. It's not supposed to overload you, right? But you also need to know what to use with the data. And for us at Cosmico, we are thinking about data in 3 distinct ways. First is that how do we analyze the data, right? How to understand the process, the current process, the current flow, and the movement of items, as well as how do we use AI to complement it so that we can do it in real time and to do it the most effectively, right?
Okay.
Next, we want to look at how do we then use this analysis, then predict, right? Because there's no point to analyze, but then you don't know what to do with the data. Yeah, so we want to use these data sets that have have been analyzed and then predict and make based on the forecasting patterns as well, to allow for businesses to look to the future. And last but not least, then after that, provide the recommendations to help to orchestrate, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to execute on the data. There's no point of having all this information, but then no outcome. So the real outcome here is then how do I execute and orchestrate? And then you have a real-time kind of ability to understand how your assets are working together. What do I need to do next, right? For optimized operations, as well as having a feedback loop to verify that all this current data and as well as future course of actions can be reconciled. So I know, that I'm on the right track.
Absolutely. Oh, you pinpointed a couple of things. So one, I've just taken a note of it. Data is available, right? So analysis of data, that what sort of data and what is the intelligence I am deriving from that data, right? And how that intelligence is helping me do my forecasting in a better fashion. How do I predict the uncertainty in the supply? People do talk about data all the time, but what is the real outcome that can be driven from that data? That piece which Cosmico is helping them solve that. That is quite interesting, right?
Yeah. So I think we're doing
Same
it in
likewise.
the four walls, but Puneet, I think we're doing it right now. We're doing it in the four walls of the warehouse, right? I believe that for data sets that we are still not complete in terms of within the outside of the four walls, which that's why we like to work with the WMS players, where they have that kind of intelligence to understand the operations of data outside of the four walls as well.
Absolutely, Lemuel. That's where, to some extent, Vinculum plays a critical role over there, because integrated with these marketplaces, this is the data comes, right? Your marketplace is the front-end platform where the order data or the customer trends, what customers are buying, when they are buying, what all they are buying, all that data comes to Vinculum, right? So that is where the front-end comes in picture, wherein we get the data, and this set of data which flows back in the system as the WMS part of it. That's where the WMS, that automation piece, Cosmico works on that. And within, outside those four, or the returns happening to get recorded in Vinculum system, right? And that data is also available through our system, which can flow back in WMS, and the Cosmico can really cut and dice and data and analyze really deep into what are the trends which are prevailing in the industry. So not just limited to the four walls. So we become the ears and eyes for Cosmico to get the data, and the data can be analyzed and do the analysis. The analysis part can be done by the Cosmico.
Yeah. That's why we have to work with WMS still. At the end of the day, it's still that important. It's hand in hand. We go complementation.
Absolutely. Just a step forward. Nowadays, of course, the moment you talk about warehouse, I can see those blue tin, right? Blue tin roofs. The warehouses are really in shabby condition. But nowadays, do you see there is a shift happening from the location centric? So earlier it used to be that I need the cheapest location in the area wherein I can go and set up my warehouse, right? But during these pandemic times, people have seen those tough times. People are struggled to get the labor. People are struggled to retain the talent, what they want. Do you see any shift in the overall supply chain standpoint, wherein it is becoming more human-centric work design instead of location-centric?
Yes. I think that if living under a rock right now, most businesses, they realize the employee has a lot of power, right? No more is it like a revolving door. You one in, one out. Now they want to see how they can help the employees in different ways in order to help them to be more productive. And it's also, automation is one part, of course, but then there's also different parts of like design that you rightly mentioned. So maybe you think about it, implementing a human-centric design as opposed to a location-centric design. Nowadays, human-centric design in logistic facilities is not only considering about the technological advancements that can help employee productivity, but also by their well-being, right? We want to
Yeah.
help them to be, doing a less glamorous task of maybe picking, right? Where they can use more of their brain and their capabilities to assist robots and do a bit more planning, right? So these are things that automation does actually lend to that, to this human-centric design, as well as where you have a good technologies that will help to reduce workplace injuries, where you have having
Absolutely.
value-added
Very
tasks,
important.
yeah,
Very important.
value-added roles like order fulfillment, problem solving, right? Human beings, workers, they love that. They kind of, the robot doesn't care. He can do it 1,000 times. He will continue to do it, right? But as a
True.
human, to give them the power to make decisions that and don't do this kind of day-to-day manual labor kind of job, they will feel more empowered and maybe even more productive. So there's definitely one aspect of it, of this so-called shift towards human-centric design.
Wonderful. This is very, very important, as there are employees who can work remotely, but the expectations, as we were discussing earlier, that warehouse guy is expected to do within those four walls, right? He has to work within those four walls. How do we help improve the overall well-being and the lifestyle for that particular person, who's working within the warehouse? That is very, very important, especially the one wherein heavy lifting is required, right? Nowadays, you have the technology, you have the machines to do that. Why do you need to use a human resource to lift a heavy one? Or the one which you talk about, that injury prone areas, wherein instead of pushing a labor over there, can we use a robot who can be prone to injuries, sort of thing, right? This is quite good. So we talked about, of course, this is on the design front, but we'll go back in the data front, if you could. But this is very, very important. Right now, if you look at as a supply chain leader, one is because you have the data flowing from all across different platform, be it the front end platform, the back end platform, and within those warehouses also, this is almost on a real-time basis, right? You know what is getting inbounded and what is getting, what is moving out from that warehouse. You have the real-time analysis of real-time availability of that data. How is supply chain, being a supply chain leader, if someone is listening as a supply chain leader, how this can help this real-time analytics to actually real-time decision making? How is it this helping the analysis of this data?
Yeah. So I think you brought out a great point when you use the word supply chain leaders, because there are supply chain users and there are supply chain leaders. Supply chain users, nowadays, everybody knows about the word data analytics, right? But supply chain leaders know that it's beyond just analytics. They need to be able to have real-time decisions being made, right? Because analytics is good if you're looking at forward thinking, or if you're looking at to do post-mortem of your data. But at the real time, let's say you want to you need a recommendation today, you need solutions, or you need decisions or recommendations made at that point in time, so that you can execute instead of waiting or looking to the future. Right now, you need to execute, and you need to execute fast. So especially for a lot of supply chain leaders, they are looking for things that require, like I said, mundane tasks with no human intervention. They just want quick results. So they want quick results for standard operations, and they want this optimized decision outputs right now, so that they can make real-time decisions rather than having to do analysis and then make decisions. Yeah.
True. And I'm sure there are enough of dashboards available. Of course, Vinculum do have some dashboards in similar fashion. Cosmico has the dashboard wherein, as a sales supply chain leader, I should be able to have the clear set of analysis available at my desktop to ensure that I can do the decisioning, as you rightly said, on the fly, right? I don't need to wait for the report to come in. It is just on the fly. And few of the areas wherein you talked about that hosting on cloud, which means access from anywhere, right? I can be driving, I can be sleeping, I can at home or at work, I'll be able to access that data, and I'll be able to decide around that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Generally, we do not encourage sleeping on the job, but if you are sleeping and you can make a decision, all the power to you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. This is, this is good, right? So, few other areas, Emil will go. I'm sure, considering the paucity of time, we'll try and cover a few more in detail. So one is, of course, there are few areas of supply chain and the warehousing part of it. As you rightly said, we are still earmarked as four walls, right? Within those four walls, whatever is happening, a supply chain leader will know. But outside those four walls, it is typically when we talk about the voice of customer, is it really reaching out to the supply chain level? Might be not, right? Do you see any shift happening from a supply chain level to embed the voice of customer in their journey, right? Do you see that trend changing at your end?
Okay, I think for that question, I think it has you have to think of it from a different approach. Customers sometimes they won't tell you exactly what they want, right? Or maybe they have to, but it's a manual input. So I think it's also important to understand that sometimes your system it has to be smart enough to understand, adapt to the customer's operational needs. So depending on their patterns,
Right.
and then it evolves. The system can adapt intelligently and to try to address the needs. Yeah. I guess this is one way that they can pick up our customer behaviors and operational changes. But beyond that, because we specialize more in the four walls, we do not get as much exposure to that. I'm not sure on Vinculum's part whether or not you have more exposure on that front. But if you do, then I think maybe you are better suited to take that question.
Absolutely, Lemuel. As you rightly said, yes, we become so automation when it's limited to the warehousing piece. We ensure that all the data, whatever is required as the voice of customer, we enable the automation agencies like Cosmico. So right now, as you rightly said, that we are the one who are getting those data, but is that data being fed in the automated system? Right now, no, right? Ideally, a supply chain leader need to know what is happening for their set of products, right? The one, of course, they are there solving the supply chain puzzle, right? But whom are they solving it for? They are solving it for customer. The key customer trend that needs to flow in back in the Cosmico system for their analysis also, right? They should know that whether their customers are liking the packaging, liking the delivery timeline, liking the SLA, the kind of packaging. So one of the examples when we were talking, so one of the recent one wherein there were few, so there is a quick commerce company who is delivering the plastic bags, right? Which majority of the people who are aware of that plastic is bad for environment, they wanted to reuse those plastic bags, right? They want to hand it over back to the delivery guy. The supply chain guy has no clue. He's sending the products in abundance, left, right, center within the same packaging itself, right? There was no feedback flowing back to the supply chain guys. So those are the areas wherein this is the voice of customer which needs to flow back, and they can act on that. Probably they can change the packaging, or they can explore how do they reuse the same packet, how the delivery guys can collect back those package, and that can be reused within the warehouse itself. So those sort of voice, that feedback that needs to flow back at a supply chain level also. That's where I was coming from.
Okay, yeah. But that's good that you guys have that visibility. I think that's very important moving forward on a data perspective.
This is very, very important because we always talk about that marketing needs to collect the data, or the sales needs to collect the data. Ideally, the data is there. That data needs to flow back to the supply chain leaders also. Wonderful. So one is, of course, we talked about the data part of it. We talked about the performance part of it, which is more of the end-to-end visibilities on the not just limiting to 4 walls of the warehouse part, but we are looking at the end-to-end visibility of data across different departments. The reason when I'm saying the end-to-end visibility, because marketing needs to know what campaign they are running, whether that product is in stock or not, right? If the product is running out of stock, that data needs to automatically flow in back to the system, both to the sales guy and the marketing guy, to plan it accordingly. That's what the end-to-end performance tracking is marked as, right? Similar fashion on the analysis front, anything which is not moving, a supply chain, a marketing leader or a sales lead, he needs to know that the inventory is stuck. The supply chain leader, his automated messages are going to the respective leader to ensure that they can plan their promotion or the marketing around that to ensure that the inventory which is stuck in their warehouse, that can be liquidated. Right. Wonderful. This is quite awesome. Actually, just a quick check on the time. Do we have another 12 minutes?
Yes, Puneet, we can still continue the discussion for good 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. Quickly, considering the paucity of time, let me know what is right now, if you look at on the supply chain front during the pandemic times, those are really tough times which have been seen. How do you make a supply chain anti-fragile? When I say anti-fragile, it means one supplier is not there. How do I trust the another one? Do you have any idea around, if you could share some thoughts around that?
Yeah. So I would say that anti-fragile, that's a big word, right? Everybody is worried about supply chains collapsing. I mean, you read on the news, it's always there's some shortage here, there's some shortage there, right? So it's really, when it comes down to it, how do we, it's a demand and supply problem, right?
Right.
Can the process speed meet or match the market demand, right?
Yes.
So you, if to make the supply chain anti-fragile, that's the number one demand or ask to do. Can the process speed meet the market demand? But that's also a hard ask, because if everybody knew it, then everybody has an anti-fragile supply chain, right? So I think there's no easy answer to this. But one of the things that I would say is that do not be like risk adverse to securing the supply chain or having flexibility in the supply chain. That's important. Flexibility within the supply chain, be able to work with different vendors to outsource and even take on new best practices across the board, right?
Yeah.
Will in diversify the kind of risk that you have. Yeah.
No, likewise, that our end also, if you look at, because there were few suppliers, so during these tough times when we were talking about that, there were a lot of suppliers who ran out of stock, right? And there were literally chaos when it comes to the suppliers of the healthcare essentials, right? People were hunting for different suppliers. That's where even Vinculum, if you look at, so we deal with multiple suppliers and help customer choose the suppliers also, because we deal with multiple suppliers. So we have the database of suppliers. So at any given point of time, you will have for a single product, multiple suppliers supplying the same product, right? And it is an easy switch. So within the WMS itself, you can actually enlist the number of suppliers for the same product, and it is an easy switch. The only problem with the large organization is the onboarding time. Any new supplier, if you look at the onboarding cycle is so huge, which runs to few days to few months also, right? Which is a task in itself. That's where we need to look at how do we cut down on the onboarding processes. How do we ensure that whatever that data that can be pre-fetched from these agencies, right? So in case if I've got the GST number inbuilt at my end, so from the GST number, I'll be able to track all the business information, whatever is required, right? Specific to that organization, specific to that supplier. Similar lines, whatever data, because data is available, be it with the government agencies or with the other these marketplaces, right? How do we leverage that data and ensure that we cut down on the onboarding process and ensuring that the risk is really mitigated by multiple suppliers, not depending on one supplier for one product. So that's all on the anti-fragile, what we are doing at our end.
Yeah. So I think it's very important, right, to have a good WMS platform also to help you really connect the dots across the different sources of data. Yeah.
Yes. So Lemil, we have covered almost all the aspects on the automation front. What are, if you look at on the listener front, what are the key takeaways the listeners can adapt to or go away with when they're thinking of the warehouse automation?
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty simple, right? We talk so much about all the benefits and all the different drivers of progress, right? But when it comes down to it, there's only really, for the warehousing at least, we believe the future lies in these 5 key aspects, which is optimization, visibility, connectivity, orchestration, as well as, last but not least, automation, right? In that sequence, if you can adopt it in that sequence, like I said, from phase 1 moving on to phase 2 and to phase 3, you are ready for that journey, right? But you have to slowly build up. You cannot feel like you want to jump from phase 1 to phase 5 or no, phase 3 and then skip all the steps in between, because even though you may think that you can save more money, but in the short run you actually may lose more money first, right? So build up the right foundations for that. And I think on this journey is, we take the journey together. You have to walk the journey together with people. You can't think that I can do everything by myself. I think with the kind of mindset, like I said just now, if you don't have the flexible mindset or you don't have the collaborative mindset, it will affect the business long run. And yeah, and last but not least, I think that you can really think about, how do I want to be disruptive? I know warehouse is the last place that people will say, oh, let's be disruptive, because we've been doing this for 30 years, 40 years. I know it's been working for 30, 40 years, but yesterday's customer is not today's customer, and it's definitely not tomorrow's customer. So tomorrow's fulfillment is going to be completely different from yesterday's customer. So your warehouse cannot look the same as it did yesterday. So if you're willing to invest in change, that is the most important mindset that you have to have. I need to tell myself today, I need to be ready to invest in change, and I want to invest in change so that you can become tomorrow's fulfillment today.
Very nicely put. Very nicely put. So, of course, just to add on the optimization front, as you rightly said, that this is the journey to start not yesterday, right? So this was supposed to start yesterday, right?
Yes.
Right now, anybody who's thinking of the automation front, as you rightly said, you can't skip steps, right? But you can optimize steps. These steps, the one which are built, in case there are redundant ones, of course, you can do away with those steps, but you can't skip it clearly, right? How do you optimize each of these steps using technologies, using different modules which are available, and ensuring that you see the ROI on the go? It's not that you've done the investment. The one which you talked about, that there are enough of software, there are enough of hardware, right? Hardware, at least you are doing the forward investment without even knowing that whether the ROI will come or not, right?
Yeah.
Software, it's easy to plug in, plug out, right? Quite easy, right? Unlike typical hardware.
Yeah.
Right?
Software, there's a saying. I think Vinculum also, maybe you hear it from the customer. I want to save as I pay. Nobody want to pay and then not save. So if you have a save as you pay model, I think everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Absolutely. This is more to do with that we are equally invested. So when I say we means Vinculum plus Cosmico, both are equally invested in your businesses and ensuring that your business grow, we also grow with you, right? So that's all. So it's not a customer relationship, it is more of a partner relationship, what we build with the customer, right? More on this, on the key elements, what you talk about, connectivity is the key, right? Connectivity to our level. So when we talk about connectivity with the 3PL, connectivity with the marketplaces, connectivity with the front-end platforms, that is the key. But when it comes to the automation part of it, different modules within that warehouse itself, right? Picking, packing, manifesting, and other things, all are interconnected, right? And you talked about, again, coming back on the first one, that you can't skip those steps. But how do you optimize that step using the technology? That is going to be the key area for our industry.
Absolutely.
Right. So this is quite good. We had a wonderful discussion. Sakshi, is there any questions around that?